views and opinions expressed on Explorers Seekers of the Truth or that of their guests or contributors are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of any entities they represent. All information on Explorers Seekers of the Truth is provided in good faith. However, we make no representation or warranty of any kind, express or implied, regarding the accuracy, adequacy, validity, reliability, availability, or completeness of any information on this talk show or website.
From monsters and ghosts to otherworldly beings, join the explorers as they venture into the darkest realms, seeking the truth to what goes bump in the night.
Good evening and welcome to Explorers Seekers of the Truth, episode 61. Tonight, as always, I am joined by my best friend and co-host and newly married man. How are you doing this evening?
I am doing fantastic. And yes, I am newly married, newly hitched as of Friday the 13th. Lucky day, lucky number. So how are you doing?
Good. We both have Friday the 13th weddings.
Yours was actually on this Friday the 13th too?
Yeah.
I did not know that.
That's why the wife knows how many Friday the 13th anniversaries we have. Is because our wedding was Friday the 13th.
I remember her saying something about that, but it didn't click. I had so much going on. I was like, oh yeah, okay. I was like, why were you counting the 13th? Well, there we go.
Yeah.
Great minds think alike.
It was cheaper. That's the reason we did it.
Although I could understand. And I want to thank you so very much for coming up and being, part of the wedding and especially your wife too, for all the help that she offered. I mean, the two of you guys did so much that we didn't even think about. It's the appreciation is beyond what you could comprehend, like honestly. And also thank you for being one of the witnesses to sign my marriage license too.
Oh, you're welcome. I really wanted to do the show intro when I introduced you guys, but I thought
that would have been awesome.
I was like, you know what? I should be a serious adult for 10 seconds of the day. So I did a very nice normal intro, but I really wanted to do the show intro.
It was very nice. I did appreciate it. And speaking of the wedding, we're going to talk a little bit more later on. Hey, Cindy, thanks for joining in. We're going to talk a little bit later on about the location that we had the reception at and some of the history of that building and what actually happened the day of my wedding, which was a little strange. So we'll get into that towards the end of the show, but I'll do my normal thing.
Yeah, tell them where they can find us.
Yes, you could find us live Tuesday nights, well, every other Tuesday night at 8:30 on Facebook. And on YouTube, we broadcast simultaneously live on those two media outlets. You could comment underneath the shows and it'll populate in our interface here on Be Live, which Cindy had just said hi to us, and we saw that. If you guys have anything you want to ask, anything you want to add pertaining to the show, please comment and we will try and get to you live during the show. You could also find us on X at Explorers Group. You could find us at our website, explorersgroup.com. There you could kind of go to the live show tab and see some of our archive shows. We are on Spotify, we are on Amazon Music, and we are also on Apple Podcasts. So you could find us all there. Go to our Facebook page. We have direct links so you guys could get in there, because the more you guys go out there, the more you guys rate us and stuff like that, the better we're going to rank and the easier we're going to be be searched out and found. So we appreciate you guys all going out and doing that for us. So that's about that. That's where you can find us.
Okay. Well, since it is October and oh my God, Can't believe you wrote spooky season in my thanks.
I did. I know you love that phrase.
I hate the phrase spooky season. But since the spooky season is upon us, we decided to dedicate tonight's episode talking about haunted houses, and we will, talk about a few of the more popular homes, as well as a few personal stories from places that we've lived. Some of these stories we have, discussed in the past, but
Yeah.
new audience, so
Yeah. And the stories, I think the stories from our personal experiences and stuff like that, especially from the miners or the yeah, can I say it? The Minersville house. Well, nobody knows what house it is, I guess. That we lived in.
look it up.
Yeah, that we lived in during college, and other family members and you and your wife had lived there, and there's a lot that had happened there, and there's some stuff that happened in my current home too that we're going to talk about tonight as well. And like I said earlier, we're going to talk about, it's not a house, but it's the inn at Jim Thorpe, the Jim Thorpe Hotel on the main strip there. There's a lot of stuff that we could talk about there, and we're going to talk about, like I had mentioned earlier, um, something that happened during the night of my wedding that was kind of interesting, and I don't know, could be paranormal, might not be. But before we go any further, I do want to say that, and I mean no offense to my beautiful wife, but my favorite picture from that night has got to be this picture. The men and the Sasquatch. That is my absolute favorite picture from the entire day, is you, me, and Bigfoot. You can't get any better than that.
I have to say, you look very dapper in that
Well,
outfit.
thank you, thank you. That was the quite a slap together ensemble there. I just kind of like pieced it from all over the place.
Yeah, not to overdo it, but you did actually. That is a look for you.
Well,
In,
thank you, thank you,
yeah,
thank you. It's like,
future reference if we ever go anywhere you need to dress up.
oh yeah, well, yeah, and you too, man. That's going to be our, when we start doing presentations and stuff like that, that'll be our attire, you know. So that's my favorite picture. But I guess to get into tonight's topic, I'm sorry, I'm a little excited because the weekend was just phenomenal. It couldn't have gone any better, and I had my best friend there. It was just the best weekend ever.
Mhm.
So anyways, so tonight the first place that we're going to talk about is the, how do you pronounce it? The Valeska Axe Murder House. Is it Valeska?
Liska?
Yeah, in Valeska, Ohio, or Iowa, is the Axe Murder House. And in the early morning hours of June 11th in 1912, sometime between midnight and 5 a.m., 8 people were bludgeoned to death with an axe inside of the Moore family home, including all 6 family members and 2 friends of one of the daughters. 6 of the victims, sadly, were children, and all 8 victims had had severe head wounds from an axe. A lengthy investigation yielded several suspects, one of whom was tried twice. The first trial ended in a hung jury, and the second ended in an acquittal. And the crime still to this day remains unsolved. The parents, Josiah and Sarah Moore, were the first victims. The killer only used the blade of the weapon on Josiah, who received the most brutal beating of the 8. And sorry if you people could hear that dinging. It's text messages going back and forth, and I don't know how to turn it off. Um, so he received the most brutal of beating of the 8 people that had died that night, and the rest of the victims were murdered with the blunt side of the axe, which would be very painful as well. And that axe had belonged to Josiah. The family friends who were staying in the guest room, Ina Mae Stillinger, and age 8, and Lena Gertrude Stillinger, age 12, were the last to be killed. All of the victims, except for Lena, the 12-year-old, appeared to have died while they were asleep. Lena was the only one who appeared to have defensive wounds on her body and was lying across the bed. So that's just even more sad, that the poor little girl had to try and defend herself before she was, brutally murdered. But the axe was left in the guest room, and it was next to a 4-pound piece of slab bacon, which there's a very disgusting theory linked to that bacon that we'll talk about later. And at some point, the killer had covered all the mirrors in the house with blankets and clothes and cooked himself a plate of food, which was left untouched in the kitchen. He also left behind a bowl of bloody water. There's something very intriguing, hauntingly intriguing, actually, about the little details like this in unsolved murders. And the gruesome killings were discovered the next morning when Mary Peckham, the Moore's neighbor, noticed the family hadn't started their morning chores. And she called Russ Moore, Josiah's brother, who let himself in. I guess he had a key to the house. And after discovering the bodies of the Stillinger girls, he called the local police, and they called the investigators in. And so there were plenty of suspects, but the murder, like I said, is still yet unsolved, which is pretty crazy in itself.
Yeah, which actually brought a couple of years ago, I was listening to a show, Bedtime Stories. And
Great show.
Yeah, I put it on, and if I'm working out or something like that, I just kind of let it play for a while. Different episodes will kick on, and they have an episode. They originally discussed it in, I believe, the axe murder story, the original one they did on it, and then they actually got into. They have a separate one called "The Man on the Train," which is a 2017 true crime book written by Bill James and his daughter, Rachel McCaffrey James. And in the Man from the Train, the author claims that they had discovered the identity and the existence of a previously overlooked serial killer, active in the late 1800s and early 1900s. And according to the author, the criminal's name was Paul Mueller, who operated through North America and killed a minimum of 59 people and possibly over 100.
Jeez.
And so this the research that basically became this book actually started when Bill was looking into the Basilica Axe Murder House story. And they were, basically it was like a writing challenge for himself, where he was looking to try to solve the case.
Right.
Try to put together. And he, started to suspect the possibility of a serial killer based on what seemed to be actions and practices by the criminal at the Basilica Axe Murder House. And he had found during this period of time similar pieces in newspaper articles from throughout the country. And his daughter started working on it with him, and she actually found even more similarities in some other cases throughout the country. And now he discovered there were scores of murders of entire families back from basically 1898 to 1912.
Yeah.
And these had occurred between like Nova Scotia, Oregon, Kansas, Florida, Arkansas, and many other locations. And some of which they can, kind of tie Mueller to. And he was, Mueller has more recently been linked to this stuff. He was the subject of an unsuccessful year-long manhunt as the sole suspect in an 1897 murder of a family near West Brookfield, Massachusetts, where he was employed as a farmhand. And, basically they kind of, at that point, I don't know if they had his name, but they kind of had a description of him. He was about 35 at the time. And he had, basically claimed to be a German military vet, was known for his carpentry skills, but spoke very little English. Described as a short and muscular in stature, with an unusually small and wide-spaced teeth, was his most distinctive feature. So they kind of have, a good idea of the person they're looking at this point there.
Yeah.
And, he had basically, had worked as a lumberjack, and woodworking. So the killer uses an axe. This guy would be very kind of proficient with the use of an axe and swinging an axe. And have the stamina to do something with an axe like this.
Hmm.
You know, and a lot of times back then, because of the lack of, even town to town police departments didn't share information, city departments didn't share it with counties, counties didn't share it with local. You kind of get these murders are considered like a one-off incident, and usually one a single person is the suspect in it, and sometimes these people end up going to trial, some of them get acquitted, some of them end up in a hung jury, and some of them are found guilty and probably were put to death, and maybe just had circumstantial evidence at best. You're talking at a time where DNA and forensics and all this is non-existent, really. So,
Hmm.
but and basically, what these authors did was put together a kind of a 30-piece similarity chart and kind of walk you through some of these items. Here is like most of the murders occur within walking distance of a rail yard junction.
Hmm.
So you could hop a freight train, you know,
Easy getaway. Yeah.
easy getaway. By the time anybody figures, well, maybe he hopped the freight train. Well, did he go east, west, north, south?
Nobody knows. Yeah.
Yeah, how many trains, especially back then when train traffic was, your predominant way of moving freight across country or, you know, interstate and all that. It wasn't tractor trailer trucks. So you probably had 4 or 5 trains, within a 6-hour period passing these homes. Which way did he go? When did he leave? When did the murders occur? Most of these murders are found the next day. You know, did he commit them the night before, the morning of, 10 minutes before the person found the bodies? You don't really know at that point. But generally, it's a slaughter of an entire family. Most of these occur in small towns with little or no police force.
Right.
And a lot of times they basically figure most of the houses had barns on the property that were close enough to the house to observe the house, but far enough away that people wouldn't necessarily notice somebody, kind of looking out, peering between boards and stuff like that.
Right. Right.
Um, None of the families had dogs. That's one of the, there's no early warning without,
Right.
a
Yep.
dog back then. And the killer used the blunt end of an axe as the murder weapon.
Hmm.
Now you think about that, that's like the father in this case was killed with the blade.
Right.
The rest of them are killed with the blunt end. It's a
Right. Well, he
very
took out the male, which, and I mean no disrespect, but typically, if he's going to be able to fight back, he's going to be the one that would be more likely to give up more of a fight.
Mhm.
So he'll, you go with the sharp end to take him out faster, and then the other one's just like more of a slow,
Mhm.
painful bludgeoning. Ugh.
Yeah. So now the killer leaves the axe in all these accounts in plain sight. So it's not like he had an axe that he traveled with, which, would kind of give somebody away if they showed up in town with an axe.
That's
Yeah.
kind of like a calling card there too. I mean, for
Mhm.
like a repeat copy, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
So, I mean, he's leaving it out in plain sight. Like this case, he had left it in the guest room by the bodies, by the bacon. Um, Basically covered the victims in sheets and blankets prior to the murder, probably to prevent blood splatter.
yeah,
You know, then again, when you're hitting somebody with an axe, not guaranteeing you're gonna not get some blood on you at that point.
yeah.
But
Well,
also,
it would
it's
probably greatly lessen the amount that would be splattering back on you if you wanted to
mm,
run away, and people wouldn't be as suspicious. Being like, "What the hell's all over you?" You know?
yeah. Well, also, I think too, if and in that account, like if they did have dogs that could track or trail, you know, if you had blood on you, it's going to be a lot easier to track you until you get that blood off you.
Right? Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
And I don't mean to interrupt, but I was just notified that apparently our YouTube feed cut out.
Oh, that's great.
So it started out, and we only got about 12 minutes into the show on YouTube, and it cut out. So We are Facebook only. Once again, we're going to have to download and upload the show to YouTube, and I don't know. This damn interface. Sorry about that. You could continue on. I just got that notification, and I'm like, you got to be kidding me. And I checked it out, and we are definitely not live on YouTube.
Yeah, when 12 minutes and 12 seconds and cut off.
Yep.
Yeah, I just had to look too. So, another part of this 30-point, thing they put up here is the killer covers the windows inside the home with towels and sheets and clothing.
Mm.
Also, there's an absence of robbery in all these cases. There's no cash taken, jewelry disturbed at the scene. Now, in a couple of the earlier cases, there was an attempt at arson.
Mm.
But you think about if you light a house on fire and that house burns up quicker than you expect, you're putting yourself at risk, but also you're drawing attention quicker.
Yeah.
Especially back then, if the house burns and the people died in the fire, nobody's necessarily looking, was this body damaged? There was no way of telling, was this body beaten before this fact or after the fact? So
yeah. You're kind of covering your tracks a little bit better that way, but like you said, at the same time too, you're also lighting quite a large beacon to draw attention to yourself.
So it would definitely kind of couple different angles on that. It would cover your tracks better, but at the same time would draw attention. If they see somebody running from a house that's burning and then all of a sudden all the people die in the fire, chances are they're going to grab you before you get too far away.
Right.
Now, one of the sad things about all this is one of the things they're looking at is there's a sadistic sexual attraction to prepubescent girls.
That's disgusting.
And it factors in a majority of these killings that they're tying to him. Now, basically what they're saying is, most of the adults were ambushed and murdered in bed while sleeping. The girls were often shown with defensive wounds or other evidence of a struggle. And, media reports of the crimes often included veiled references to the killer having ejaculated at the crime scene or having molested the girls after death.
That is disgusting.
Yeah. So you're looking at somebody, like they bring up that the slab of bacon in this case. And, kind of a disgusting thing on it is they think it might have been a self-pleasuring aid.
Ugh. That's disgusting. Well, I mean, if you're sick enough, are you there? Did you freeze? It looks like you froze.
Damn it, I can hear you.
No, you're back. You're back. Now you're moving. Okay.
Yeah, you on my end, you freeze, and then all of a sudden I could hear you talking, but you couldn't hear me.
No, you were just sitting there frozen, like your face was frozen. I'm like, oh crap, not again. But if you're sick enough to get to the point where you're going to commit such, heinous crimes, it's not surprising that all the other sexual tendencies would follow thereafter. But still, all in all, it's just absolutely disgusting.
Now, one thing you got to note is Bill James did note nationwide from 1890 to 1912, there was an average of 8 murdered families per year. Now, most of which do not share these characteristics.
They were just murdered.
Yeah. Now, this also, you think 1890, you may still have had some land disputes, where families were, killed in a raid or something like that. So, early 1912, you still have some, border issues and stuff like that. So they're saying nationwide, you're taking, a couple different things into account there. Now, one thing they do point out is in nationwide, there was a lack of any kind of crime similar to this in 1908, which leads them to believe that the killer may have been in prison for a minor crime at that point. I said before, without the state sharing this information, there's no APB out for this person. So, he commits a small petty crime in California, goes to jail for a year there. I mean, he's already committed maybe 10 or 13 murders, family murders at that point. So, and they look at about 14 family murders with 59 victims that with more or less certainty that he's involved in them.
Yeah.
And possibly another 25 family murders that would be an additional 94 victims.
Yeah.
So if this was accurate, Mueller or the man from the train is either just behind or ahead of Samuel Little, the American serial killer with the most victims at about 60 murders and 93 claimed murders.
Jeez. Well, Cindy brought up a good point. Killing a whole family would definitely seem to be an underlying reason.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like there's obviously something there.
Yeah.
A family issue of some sort as an underlying kind of. But anyway, sorry, I jumped in there.
Well, it's fine. I needed a drink. I've been talking.
All right.
So now in 1922, there's a murder, the Hinterkaifeck murders in Germany.
Hinterkaifeck.
Yeah,
Yeah.
good luck.
However you pronounce that.
Which bears some strong similarities to these crimes in the U.S.
Mhm.
And if you think Mueller was allegedly a German soldier, so was he deported back to Germany at this point?
Or did he jump a ship back or something?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
And basically, among the victims was a young girl. The blunt edge of a farm tool was used as a weapon. There was no robbery. And so, people started to theorize these all might be connected. Now, this family that was killed,
mhm.
there are some other theories on that. They were early supporters of the National Socialist Party in Germany. Their land was later seized by the Nazis and used as, I forget what it was used for. It was some kind of either training area or something like that, but it was seized. Now, here's the thing. You got this guy who is, kind of a vicious person. You kind of put him in a place and say, hey, if this family dies, no harm, no foul. We're not going to look into it too much.
Mhm.
So now,
Mm.
there was another murder in 1911 of two families in a single night in Colorado Springs, Colorado, which is very similar to the 1912 murders.
Mhm.
But, there's no necessarily direct correlation that these are, perpetrated by the same person, but you have, more than enough to kind of support this theory of this man on the train hopping trains, killing a few people, killing a family here, hopping the train, ending up, in
Again.
Oregon.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it would make sense to use the railroad systems because they're kind of all over the place at that time, and it is one of the primary means of transportation for long distance. So,
Yeah. Yeah. I
that's just
mean,
makes perfect sense.
yeah. And back then, the hobo, they would chase you off the train if they found you, but they weren't necessarily always looking either. You got some, rail yard stuff that was going on back in those days. And so they're not,
You know what? Maybe this guy ended up being the bunny man. Wasn't that around the same time? The person that was the crazy murderer that was hopping the trains?
I can't remember if that's the same time frame or not, though.
I want to say it was the early 1900s. Could
Yeah.
be. We'll have to look into that. Because just after I was thinking about it, I was like, that kind of sounds like the bunny man with the train hopping and stuff like that.
Well, you had the torso killer in Ohio.
I don't know about that one.
Um, Elliot Ness post getting Capone on tax evasion charges there was a slew of bodies found. I want to say it was like the torsos were found, and the person who was doing it started taunting the police. So they brought Elliot Ness in, the Untouchables, and he was the greatest American crime fighter. So they brought him in. It was one of the only cases I think he failed at because they never actually found the murderer. But
Interesting.
that was around the 1920s, I think,
Well,
1930s, something like that.
just a few years later.
Yeah.
Well, with all that said, there is a slew of paranormal activity that is connected to the Villisca Axe Murder House. I mean, it's the typical stuff: disembodied footsteps, things moving, voices, apparitions, shadows, and bad vibes. But you can actually rent the place out for a mere $428. You could book the Villisca Axe Murder House for the entire night. You and up to 5 friends can spend the night. Or if you're not that brave, you could take a day tour for $10 per person. And you can find more information on the Villisca Axe Murder House and watch some videos of like some paranormal videos of evidence and stuff like that on their website at VilliscaIowa.com. And here is actually a picture of the Villisca Axe Murder House. And you can see they have it pretty well advertised there. And that's the barn in the background that Chad was saying that the person was able to keep an eye on the house and still stay out of sight and whatnot. So that is the Villisca Axe Murder House, the Axe Murder House. Yeah,
Oh, geez.
whatever. It's a
Well,
completely different movie.
yeah. Um, yeah, I mean, I've watched a little bit of stuff on that, and some of the newer stuff when they're using all these apps, and it looks like a big put on. I
Hmm.
do remember years ago that guy who tried to spend the night there by himself and got all creeped out and left. And basically, he was saying, he was hearing somebody walking on the floor above him,
Hmm.
some
Yep.
loud bangs, and was seeing like shadows out of the corner of his eye. And, he actually got to the point where he felt like somebody was in the house with him.
Hmm.
And, he ended up leaving in the middle of the night and driving to his next destination on his trip.
Yeah, I remember seeing that. That actually was good, and that one I felt personally was a little bit more believable because the dude had your standard old school pieces of equipment, like
Yeah.
just the voice recorders, EMF. You know what I mean? The stuff that's actually going to generate a response by either an electric force or a physical presence or a touch
Mhm.
or an audible sound, not like you were referencing before. And we commented about this a lot on that one episode we did a couple of years ago, is paranormal gear getting too high tech, and the
Mhm.
apps and stuff like that with GPS location and word banks and all that stuff that could be easily written into a script, into a program. Your phone uses the GPS, finds out where you are, does a simple search on lore and legend. It'll start generating shit that's pertaining to that location. So that's why I
Mhm.
stay away from all the apps and that crap. And I just, I don't know. But that dude was there with the tried and true, his audio recorder, camera, still camera, video camera, you know what I mean? The stuff that is kind of a little bit harder to, I mean, unless, look, there's ways to fake things, but I mean, this dude was there just filming straight on. He had no intention. It was just for his personal venture
Mhm.
and just for his YouTube channel. He wasn't making money off it. There was nothing, there was no drive there, or there was no factor in play that would make him want to fake anything. And I wish I could find the link to it. We both tried looking for it. We couldn't find it, but if we do find it, we'll post it under the show notes later. Um, but it was one of my favorites too. I remember that video. So that was the Villisca Axe Murder House in Iowa. We are now going to move on to the Conjuring House. And the Conjuring House, the house was built in 1736 in the Cape Cod style, but didn't gain fame until Roger and Carolyn Perrin and their 5 daughters claimed they observed ghastly happenings in the 9 years that they lived there, from 1971, including the smell of rotting flesh and something levitating their beds as they slept. And those two things enough, I think, would be enough to want to make you want to leave.
Mhm.
Just the smell alone. I mean, why would you want to put up with that? One of the girls claimed to have been possessed by a spirit. The eldest daughter, Andrea Piran, told USA Today in 2013 the parent family sought the help of well-known demonologist Ed and Lorraine Warren, which you could, draw your own conclusions with them. And they said the house was haunted by the spirit of Bathsheba Sherman, a woman buried at a nearby Harrisville cemetery, and who, according to local folklore, was a witch who believed or lived in the house. I'm sorry. A fictionalized version of Sherman served as the main antagonist in the Conjuring movie. The current owners, Jen and Corey Heinzen, agree that or I would say one of the more recent owners, Jen and Corey Heinzen, agree that the homestead is haunted. They told Wall Street Journal, but believe the lingering spirits are connected to the local battles between Native Americans and the English migrants during the King Philip's War in the 1670s. And we talked about that more in depth about the War of King Philip's War in one of our past shows on the Bridgewater Triangle. I believe that was episode 59. You can find that on our Facebook and YouTube channels. Excuse me. The Heinzens are paranormal investigators themselves, and after purchasing the house in 2019, they rented out the property for people to do their own investigations and paranormal experiments and stuff. But under the Heinzens, the visitors were welcome to explore the home during day tours, night investigations, and live stream events. However, the couple soon became overwhelmed with the business of running a popular haunted house, so they decided to, excuse me, they decided to put it up for sale. And in 2022, according to the Associated Press, the Heinzens sold the property to Jacqueline Nunez, a Boston-based developer who strongly believes in the paranormal. Fortunately for fans, Nunez has continued the Heinzens' original mission of paranormal business at the home, still offering tours, investigations, and even private events there. But Nunez agreed with the Heinzens that she would not live at the house full-time because the energy is so powerful.
Yeah. Now, according to travelchannel.com, the long and tragic history of the quaint log home isn't immediately evident to people driving along Round Top Road in Burrillville, Rhode Island. But violent spirits older than America itself are lurking on the old parent family home. Do you like that?
Dun, dun, dun.
Near Rhode Island's border with Massachusetts. So, it's funny, Round Top Road, little round top, big round top.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Maybe something about the name.
So yeah, I was
So,
gonna say, from one of your favorite places.
yeah, as Les said, the home was built in 1736. And this is long before the actual Revolutionary War, even. And it was passed down through several generations of the Arnold family. But stories of the paranormal activity date back to the 18th century when the spirits of Native Americans began to haunt the homestead and the home was where after the home was built. The Arnold family and the property reportedly saw its fair share of suicides, murders, and mysterious deaths during this long history. But paranormal activity from the 70s is what launched the home into the spotlight. In 1970s, the Perrons, Perrons or Perrons,
Parents, yeah.
I think. I've listened,
Perrons is
yeah,
the last name of the family.
yeah, I've listened to her talk a few times. The oldest daughter, she actually gives a hell of a good interview. Now the Perrons family was a family with 5 daughters. They bought the property and moved in. While the paranormal activity almost immediately, the family stuck it out for 10 long years before finally selling the house in 1980 and moving to South Georgia. Their experiences at the home, as well as an exorcism conducted by Ed and Lorraine Warren, is what inspired the 2013 movie The Conjuring.
Mm-hmm. Great movie.
People trash that whole series because it's Ed and Lorraine Warren, but it's just a good series
I
of
enjoyed
movies.
it for what it was. I mean, it was a scary movie. The
Mhm.
first one I liked, the first, the Conjuring. I loved it. I didn't really get into the spin-offs. What was linked to the Nun and Annabelle and all that stuff were kind of linked with the Warren stories and
Yeah, I actually like pretty much all of them. I mean, they get a little. I'm
Hollywood.
waiting for Ed and Lorraine to change into their Batman and Robin outfits next, but
Yeah, right.
you know, slow their roll there because a lot of the stuff that they've kind of written into these stories isn't even them.
Right, right.
But while the Perns lived in the home, the children regularly saw apparitions and spirits around the house. There was
Mm.
rampant poltergeist activity. Beds would levitate and shake, and the Perron family regularly experienced physical injuries due to a particularly angry spirit. It was common to hear voices around the home.
Now, before we go on to the next part, a father of three daughters, if my kids were experiencing, poltergeist activity, beds levitating and shaking, physical harm and injury, they were there for what, 10 years almost.
Mhm.
No way. No way would I stay there.
See, I think it's one of those things where in the movies it's portrayed like it all happens at once.
No, yeah,
Like,
it could have been once every maybe 2 years, whatever, and it's not a
yeah,
very common thing. And you can
yeah,
write it off as, well, did they bump themselves and they didn't notice it until
mhm,
later, but
yeah,
I don't know.
yeah. It's one of those things where I think like certain things happened, in a pretty quick timeline. It's like anything. It happens real fast. You don't necessarily know how to attribute what it was, and
Mhm.
then it stops for a while.
Yeah.
Like it's one of those things. Like if you came in the kitchen door every day and a glass flew up and hit the wall next to you, you'd buy plastic cups.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, but also if it happened every day, you'd kind of be like, yeah, I'm going to buy plastic cups and let it try to break the plastic cup. But if it happened one time, at 12 o'clock at night, a glass came flying across the room. You'd look around, there's nobody there. You'd be like, that was kind of weird. But what was it? It was a truck going by the house and it, bounced the glass off the thing and it went flying. You know, I think it's one of those things where you look at it like a movie. It happens in 2 hours. You're like, holy shit, I would have moved out in 2 minutes.
Right. That's true. That's true.
Yeah, you're
Yeah.
going 10 years of random things. You
True,
know,
true. And it's probably like anything, like with well, some of the stories that we'll talk about later with personal stuff, like odd happenings in the house and stuff like that. Your kids say, "Oh, my bed was shaking," or then was it, what I mean, or was it your imagination? Was it blah blah blah? But then again, I do remember growing up things that happened to me, and I try and listen to my kids with more of an open mind and understanding because I experienced stuff growing
mhm.
up and my parents tried to write it off as, oh, it's just your imagination or blah blah blah. But I know what I experienced.
Oh, yeah. Well, here's the thing. We're looking at people our parents' age telling their kids, or even a little bit older than our parents would have been, around that age, yeah. When this kind of stuff wasn't on every television channel, you know, this stuff wasn't real. It wasn't normal conversation to be having.
Yep.
So,
Figments of the imagination.
also, you have 5 girls.
Yeah.
Um, my sister used to mute the television because I ruptured an eardrum as a child and was partially deaf. She would mute the television, pretend like she could hear it, and then like lip like she was talking to me.
She's horrible.
Yeah. Okay. So you got 5 of them.
Yeah, yeah.
So was it parents thinking like, oh, is the older one picking on the little one? Is the little one's getting back at the older one?
Yeah.
You know, so, but getting back into this, like, legend
Oh,
has
wait,
it.
Cindy has a question here. I'll see if I could bring it up onto the thingamajiggy here. Okay. So, do you think paranormal activity responds to the acknowledgement of it? In other words, if you ignore it, would it do more or just maybe less? But then that would mean it has to be cognizant of both realms, dead, undead? That's a really great question, actually. And I don't know. It kind of makes me scratch my head because it's almost like the more you acknowledge it, the more it's going to do stuff. But then again, at the same time, if you don't acknowledge it, would it heighten the activity because it wants to be seen? I think it's kind of a little bit of both. I think when it comes to poltergeist in particular, it's just going to go off whether you want to acknowledge it or not. Especially
Yeah,
like with the furniture stacking and shit like that. I mean, it's kind of like it's pretty obvious.
yeah. Well, I would have to say I think depending on also what kind of spirit you're dealing with.
Mhm.
If you're dealing with somebody with unfinished business, I think once you acknowledge it, is going to try to relay that information to you to
'Cause it
finish up
wants that information out. Yeah.
yeah, to finish up its business so it can cross over.
Right.
Now, when you're dealing with like a poltergeist, you have a lot of like the naughty girl theory where most poltergeist activity involves a you know girl around the age of puberty
Mhm.
looking for attention and it's a almost psychological manifestation of all that energy
Yeah.
that does these things. So um I would say, and even in personal experience, I would say sometimes when we acknowledge certain things, they did greater things for
The
attention.
attention. Yeah.
You
I
know,
would agree.
so
Well, let's go back to when we were at the house during college.
mhm,
The more we started recognizing stuff, the more we started noticing things happening, it just kept getting worse and worse and worse.
mhm.
I thought.
Well, I would say in the not necessarily that it was any scarier or more dangerous, but definitely more in your face.
Yeah.
Like more obvious stuff would happen. I
Well,
wouldn't say that.
when I'm lying in bed and watching the freaking doorknob handle physically shake up and down and move, twist side to side, and because you know how they were the old doors, they were loose. It
Mhm.
would shake side to side like somebody was turning it, and move up and down, so you're turning it and shaking it, and then the closet door opens up, a completely different. Yeah, it got scarier the more it went
Eh,
on.
well,
For me,
in your room, yeah.
yeah,
My room, not
yeah.
so much. My room was
Yeah,
down the
there
dark.
wasn't yeah, yours was like the void of non-activity.
Well, because I had to go down the dark ass hallway to get to my room, and no matter what you did, that hallway was always pitch black.
Yeah, that's true. That was scary
No
enough,
matter how
actually.
many lights you put in that hallway is still like dark as shit.
Yeah, that's even in the daytime. It was like
Mhm.
a
Yeah,
black hole, yeah.
it's never peace like calm in that hallway. It's always like pitch black, sun shining in all the windows, and it's still dark as shit in that hallway walking back towards that closet and the bedroom
That's
door.
that is true. That is true.
But
But anyways,
so yeah, now legend has it that Bathsheba Sherman was a Satanist who sacrificed her own child to the devil.
mm,
It is believed that Bathsheba was an entity responsible for the injuries and poltergeist activity in the most haunted house in the world. The Conjuring House also offers ghost investigations and tours.
mhm.
It also offers camping, which
Yep.
is ghost camping.
Mhm.
One spot which you'll find interesting is a site near the pet cemetery. Per their website, it reads behind a stone wall and under a tree lies the remains of beloved pets long dead, long buried. Catch the eyes of a phantom horse and invite the visitation of one of our ghost cats. Hear a
Mhm.
distant bark and a cow call, and it might be one of the many animals who lived, died, and remains. Sorry, my notes jump over there. Part of the haunted history. Bring your cat balls, REM pods, and night vision binoculars. You can find out more at the website at theconjuringhouse.com.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, that the Conjuring House is pretty cool, but it's very pricey.
well, here's the thing. We know from going to these places, every one of them is pricey. And if this place can get $400 for 2 hours and I'm giving you 6, I can get 1,200.
Right.
You know,
Right.
if I let you stay here overnight or for a weekend, well, it's 2,000.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, it, hey, they've got the location, they've got the folklore, they got the mythology. If you want to go do it, you kind of got to pay for it.
Yeah.
Now, here's the thing. If you don't go in the house and you're just on a property, you know, I'm not condoning trespassing, but there was
Yeah, yeah.
many times we went places that, we never entered any of the buildings, but we were definitely on property that was associated with,
Said
some of these.
location.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and honestly, from some of the stuff I've seen in that Sleepless Unrest or whatever that one was on Tubi, the documentary about one of the groups doing the Conjuring House,
Yeah.
the freaking yard could be crazy at night. Like
Yeah.
people
Oh,
people
yeah.
are seeing floating lights and
Mhm.
UFO type, UAPs as they're called now, type things happening.
Yep.
Um, Strange shadows, off in the distance, moving around in the fields
Mhm.
and all that. So,
Well, simply put, like we said earlier, I mean, that was part of, like, the Bridgewater Triangle goings-ons and whatnot, like
mhm,
the King Philip's War and all that. You have that history. I mean, 1600s. That's
mhm,
hundreds of years worth of who knows what going on there. Then you mix in the folklore of the witch and the weird things going on. I
Lion,
mean,
the
there's
Witch, and the
there's
Wardrobe.
yeah, exactly, exactly. But I mean, I don't know. There's a lot that could possibly go on. And one of the things that before we jump onto the next house, one of the things that I think is funny, like we're talking about, the movie and everything, and how some things were Hollywood and whatnot. You think of The Conjuring like this,
Mhm.
this big foreboding house in this smoky environment, creepy, all the dead trees and whatnot. You're like, oh my god, it's like the perfect storm. But then in reality, you look at the house and it's like just your typical little New England little shacky house. Just
Mhm.
so unassuming, you know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
you like, looking at this, I'm like, "Nah, I wouldn't think that's a haunted house by any way, shape, or form." And it doesn't even to me, it doesn't even look like it would be as old as it is, you know what I mean? It just looks like a typical New England-esque town or house, so
Mhm.
I don't know, man, it's
Yeah. Well, I know, one of the things that Andrea Perron had said when they were filming the movie, um, they had brought the whole the remaining members of the family that were alive when they were
Mhm.
filming. They brought them to the set,
Uh-huh.
and they didn't report anything weird happening until the family got there.
Oh, wait,
They
at
had
the movie set or the
At the
actual house?
movie set. Yeah, at the
Really?
movie set. Yeah.
Wow.
There's a great interview with her. Um, it's on YouTube. It's just somebody, kind of asking. It was, I think, around the time the movie came out, or maybe a little bit after the movie became popular. And it's just like an hour, or maybe 2 hours of her telling the story, kind of correcting the movie history
Yeah.
of the
Yeah.
story. And she talks about, yeah, when they brought them to the set, I think her father was still alive, and her sisters. Now they all
Mhm.
went together and wrote the book.
Yeah.
um, but the funny thing was, none of them talked about what they were writing, like their parts of the book. And
Uh-huh.
yet, like, they were sending her, because she was the one doing most of it, they were sending her like their like chapter about this year, and the other sister would send the chapter, and she would put her chapter in, and maybe the dad or somebody had some stuff in the other sisters. And she started to realize, like, they're telling the same story just from a different person's point of view.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't like, hey, do you remember when this happened? Okay, you write down what you. They were just writing their little like remembrances of stuff, but yet they were all pulling the same stories. Like the same items were coming up, and she said they were coming in. Like the sister would write for a week and send it to her, and the other sister would, she'd get that on Friday. On Sunday, she'd get the thing from the other sister, and it would match. Like
That's pretty
it was
weird.
the same kind of stuff.
Huh.
But yeah, they said they had some weird stuff happen on the set, like the power went out, like completely went out on the set, but was like when they walked outside, the power where they were filming was fine, but the set itself, all the power went down. They had
Interesting.
like light bulbs exploding and stuff like that in the
Hmm.
stage areas and stuff. And
Well, I think it's very possible that families and people, individuals, could carry certain energy with them. It may not necessarily be a ghost, but it may very well be the person themselves that bring a certain kind of energy that makes stuff happen. You know what I mean? So that something could be attached to that family, or those girls, and they were the ones that were experiencing most of the phenomenon anyway. So, I
Mhm.
mean, they might have been bringing it with them, and also don't forget too, it could have been the film itself, the film set itself. You take all those memories that, they were writing and then contributing to the writers and stuff like that,
Mhm.
and then you take the set and it's just like a culmination or a manifestation of that memory or that energy, and it could have created its own,
Mhm.
which is interesting by itself. But moving on, next we're going to talk about the history of the Mercer Williams house. The Mercer Williams is now owned by Jim Williams' sister Dorothy Kingery, who runs it as a museum. The Mercer Williams is located at 429 Bull Street and stands on Monterey Square, also haunted, in Savannah, Georgia. The house was designed for General Hugh Weedon Mercer by architect John S. Norris. Norris was a New York born and raised on the playgrounds and spent most of his days before coming to Savannah, where he enjoyed success in building houses, churches, and lighthouses throughout the area. In 1860, ground was broken on the Mercer property, but construction was halted due to the Civil War. As for Norris himself, he quickly moved back to his home state just before the war began. And around the year 1868, the house was completed by its new owner, John Wilder, as the Confederate General Hugh Weedon Mercer was unable to finish his dream home. Interestingly enough, no member of the Mercer family ever actually had the chance to live at the Mercer Williams house. And during a period of time in the 20th century, the house was home to the Savannah Shriners Ali Temple. Those guys with the funny hats who drive those little teeny tiny cars. After the Shriners' tenure, the house rested in a vacant state for nearly 10 years before it finally found a new owner in 1969.
And like many of the historic homes in Savannah, there have been reports of paranormal activity here at the Mercer Williams house. And these reports usually include commonalities like apparitions, disembodied voices, phantom footsteps,
Mm-hmm.
and an unnerving feeling that somebody is watching you.
Hmm.
And some of the more notable ghost stories from the mansion are a spirit of a young boy, Tommy Downs, who fell to his death and continues to roam the property grounds to this very day.
Hmm.
Now, another form of paranormal activity that goes on at the house is a phenomena that you can experience without ever entering the Mercer Williams house. Over the years, citizens of Savannah and tourists alike have witnessed ghostly images, mostly a reflection that appears in the house of the windows, the windows of the house. And these ghost-like reflections appear not only at night but during the day time also.
Hmm.
Now, during the days of the ownership by Jim Williams, he was known for throwing this lavish Christmas party, and it is alleged that if you passed by the Mercer Williams house On a night which Jim Williams would throw his annual Christmas party, you will see chandelier lights illuminating the whole house, painting images of guests in the windows as they move from room to room. Some even claim to see a woman in her best societal gown and men dressed to the nines entering the house, showing up for the festivities fashionably late.
Every time, every time I read that line where the guest passing by the window, I always thought of Home Alone when the cardboard cutouts of Michael Jordan would go past the window and stuff.
Well, I told you what the one guy I know that owned one of the houses in Gettysburg did.
What?
His house was allegedly haunted. He owned a publishing company. He does not believe in ghosts.
Mhm.
So his house is on the Baltimore Pike.
Mhm.
We've walked by it several times. He doesn't own it anymore. It's now, I think, part of the hospital or something like that owns it, or some group owns. Next time I drive by it, I'll get the name. He would dress his son up like a soldier
Mhm.
at night at like 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, and have him walk by the downstairs windows.
That's
Well,
creepy.
there's big curtains on the windows, so all you see is the shadow of like a soldier walking by the window. And
That
then,
is creepy.
of course, everybody would say, "Oh, that house is haunted." Da, da, da. It was used. It was used as, I think, part of the Masonic group owned it at one point. The Masonic Lodge had actually owned the house at one point. So of course
Well,
there's all
that's
those rumors.
interesting by itself too. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there's all these rumors. I think they had owned it, but they used it as like guest quarters for when people were coming into town.
Mhm.
So they had somewhere for them to stay and a house and stuff like that. But yeah, he owned it for a couple of years, and of course, all the ghost stories started picking up because people saw it, and then all of a sudden the ghost tour started doing it. And he'd sit there and he'd be like out in front of the Farnsworth, listening to the ghost tours. And they'd be like, "That house across the street there, at night they'll see a soldier walk by the windows," and he'd start laughing. And finally, one day, we were sitting out there, and he came back by. They're like, "Why were you guys laughing about that?" And he goes, "Because I own the house." "No, you don't." He's like, "Yeah, I do." And they're like, "Well, have you ever seen the ghost?" He goes, "You want to know what the ghost is?" They're like, "Yeah." He goes, "It's my 10-year-old son. We do this every so many weeks, and these idiots keep telling you the story." So, yeah, some of that stuff sometimes, yeah, like he did it as a put on because, like I said, he completely does not believe in ghosts. I mean, he lived in the house for years. He's like, "There's
Yeah.
nothing going on in that house."
Well, I mean, that's makes for a good story, at least,
Mhm.
at the very least, you know. But the Mercer Williams house, like we said, is a museum in Savannah, Georgia, and this is what it looks like. It's your typical stately Southern home, Victorian-esque architecture, gorgeous, just a
Mhm.
gorgeous place.
And it was also, if anybody's seen the movie Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil,
Yep, yep, that
okay, yeah, that's the house. That's the house the book is written and the movie was based off of. The story is that the story of the one owner,
yeah,
the
yeah.
fictionalized version of it. But
Well, we are at the bottom of the hour. We are coming into our actually we're past. We're past. It's 4 minutes past. So we were talking about at the beginning of the show some personal stuff. So we actually ran out of time. So what I will talk about though is what happened at the wedding, my wedding, Friday, this past Friday, the 13th. I got married, and officially, I mean, I always called her my wife. We've been together for 15 years. We have 3 beautiful kids together, and we did everything backwards. The kids, the house, and all that crap. So now we finally put ourselves first because we had a lot of personal things that came up over the years with family members and whatnot. So it was finally time for us to do this for ourselves. And but anyways, we got married on Friday, and the reception was in the basement of the Jim Thorpe Hotel, or the Inn at Jim Thorpe, and which I will show you. Thank you, Cindy, for the congrats there. This is what the place looks like. This is the Inn at Jim Thorpe. Beautiful Victorian style hotel. We like I said, we had the reception in the basement, and the baker came and set up our cake. And in the basement, I don't have a picture of the cake, but I would have shown it. So it was a three-tier cake, right? It had a large base, middle and a top, and a little topper that we had for it. So they're all pretty solid. Now there was a filling in the cakes and stuff, so I don't know if maybe that made it unstable. I don't know, but he had supports and all that crap that goes on to putting a cake together, and it was set back towards the back of the table. Now, the staff, before people showed up, the staff said that they were over by the bar, which was all the way across the room. You had to go up a little step, and it was quite a good distance away from where the cake was. Um, like I said, the cake was on the table. It was set back, so it was your typical 6 foot by what would you say, 3 foot
Yeah, it
wide
was,
or deep? Yeah.
yeah.
So it was back. The center and top part of tier of the cake somehow fell off of the base of the cake, went all the way across the rest of the table, landed on the floor. Um, the waiting staff said that they caught it out of the corner of their eye, and they just watched the cake just kind of tumble down and crash. No cake got on the table. Nothing was on the tablecloth. My topper somehow didn't break, thank God, because it was a custom piece that I had to search very hard to find. Um, but anyways, luckily the cake topper didn't break, but the top two tiers somehow missed the other 2.5 feet, and just with the height of the cake, I don't know how the hell it made that leap, but supposedly the basement is haunted by the spirit of a woman, and also the spirit of what they said is a short man with kind of early or late 1800s attire with a handlebar mustache. And for anybody who doesn't know, Jim Thorpe is known for the Molly Maguires, which was a group of Irish immigrant miners that were kind of formed a rebellious group, the Molly Maguires, that kind of stood up against and fought against the monopoly of the mine companies, because they basically, when you were a miner, the mining companies owned your home, they owned the towns that you lived in, they had their own currency, their own stores. So you were basically trapped and held under the thumb of the mining companies, because like I said, the currency and everything was could only be spent in the company stores, and you really couldn't leave. You couldn't get out of there because your money was essentially worthless. So you were trapped at the mine. So the Molly Maguires fought against that, and up the road is the jailhouse that they were housed in, and one of them put their hand against the wall when they were being convicted, and he said that his handprint will remain there until um, his innocence is proven and whatnot. And the handprint is still there, and they painted over it, and it keeps coming through, and it doesn't go away. Um, but anyways, so some of the family members, when the trials were going on, they stayed at the hotel. There's a couple of rooms. I believe it's room 210 and 311 are haunted, because apparently there were these two crossed lovers. They apparently they were both married, and they were having an affair, and they were both supposed to meet up there. One booked 210, one booked 311, and they got the rooms backwards. They thought one was the other. They actually ended up not meeting up, and they died, and I guess they're still searching for each other there in those rooms. And one of the waitresses actually told me, when she was in the upper dining room on the first, not the basement, but the first floor, she was just, it was after hours, and she was doing some final work and whatnot, and she said she saw a black mass in the shape of a body, but it was coming out around the corner horizontally. So it was kind of like floating on its side, and the hair was kind of waving around. Like she said, it looked like it was underwater, but it just kind of floated out from behind the wall, or I guess coming into the one room, and it was coming out from behind the wall, and it just freaked her out, and she got out of there. But so I thought that was kind of interesting. I mean, it was my wedding night in a haunted hotel on Friday the 13th, and our cake somehow mysteriously uplifted and fell on the floor, didn't land on the table because like I said, it was another 2.5 feet. Like if it were to fall or slide, it would have smushed down on the table, would have been on the table, but there was nothing. And then you guys came in shortly after. Like, did you see it happen? Did you see them cleaning it up? Like, or was it already
Oh,
cleaned up?
oh no! Your cake was on the floor when we walked. They panicked when we walked in that door.
Yeah.
They were like, "Oh my god! Oh my god! Oh my god! Turn off the light!" And we like looked over, and the cake was on the floor. And we're like, "What happened?" They're like, "It just fell on the floor." And we're like, "What do you mean it fell on the floor? Clearly, it fell on the floor, but what do you mean it
Yeah.
fell on the floor?" They're like, "Oh, we were over here, and we just heard it slap, like the you know moist
Cake
cake
slap. Yeah.
pan hitting the floor."
Mhm.
And they're like, "It was just all laying over here." No, your topper didn't hit the floor.
Thank God.
No, it wasn't on the floor.
It
They
was or
they
was not? You're
it
freezing
w
up,
it was not on the floor.
which
It
is
never
so
touched.
bizarre.
Yeah, the topper of the cake never touched the floor. There was a smushed pile of cake on the floor, though, and what you don't understand is Les is saying it went, 2, 3 foot off the table. It didn't land right at the end of the table. It landed about another foot and a half onto the floor.
Yeah. So it's almost like it had to have been picked up and just
Yeah,
dropped because
like
there was nothing on the table at
like,
all other than a couple little berry stains. Because like we had flowers and fresh berries and shit all
figs,
over the
yeah,
thing. Yeah.
some
Yeah.
of those had, and honestly, some of that was them trying to, like, salvage the stuff that was still on the cake
Yep. Yep.
and trying to move
Well,
stuff so they could
I
clean.
actually talked to Gianluca, my baker, today. I was talking with him, and he even said too, because the waitress staff were trying to be like, he didn't support it, he didn't put any supports in, and I was talking with him. He's like, I absolutely did. He's like, it was, and it was everything was layered. It had like
Yeah,
the little, you know what I mean, the supports that you would go on each tier and whatnot. He's like, absolutely, I did. And
yeah,
he said that the berry stains was actually when he was originally setting it up, some of the berries kind of rolled, and he
mhm,
moved it.
yeah,
So
yeah, the cake being on the floor, like I said, the topper wasn't on the floor, and they had just run over to start cleaning it. It wasn't like,
yeah,
oh, they were cleaning it for a minute, they sat. No, they panicked when we walked in the door, and then we were like, "Okay, we gotta fix this. How are we doing this? Do you guys have a baker on? Like, is there cake upstairs? We can kind of smash this together and make it." Honestly, I wanted to eat the cake off the floor. I was
it was
hungry at that
damn good
point.
cake. That was damn good cake. Well, we were supposed to save the well for those listening. Gianluca, my baker, actually put another cake together, drove all the way back over, reassembled it, and had it all back together in perfect timing before the photographer left, like 10 minutes before the photographer was scheduled to leave. And we were able to get pictures of the cake and the whole cutting and feeding each other part, which I actually ended up choking because I tried to suck her hand in as to be funny because I was like, I was going to eat her hand and I sucked the cake into my throat and I started hacking, which was, kind of entertaining. But that's me. But but yeah, God love him. That dude, he came back, put the whole freaking thing back together, and like had a whole brand new cake, decorated, designed. I don't know how the hell he pulled it off, but it was fantastic. And even still, even if he couldn't, I didn't give a shit. I had so much fun that day. You know what I mean? Even Leslie, like I was shocked that she wasn't, because when you stepped out and you're like, okay, before we go in, something happened. Do you want the bad news or do you want to go in and then just find out about it later? And Leslie's like, I want to know now what happened. And I was like, oh God, oh God.
Well, the worst thing was I knew about it when I went down to get the girls from you guys to bring them
Yeah,
back
yeah.
up. And I'm like looking at you two doing the photos, and I'm like, yeah, well, we're like like 20 minutes behind. So I'm gonna have everybody stay up in the up in the lobby and up at the bar and stuff like that before they come down. You're like, oh, okay. And I'm like,
Yeah, I had no clue. I'm like, all right, that's great. That gives us more time to get the pictures done.
yeah.
But
And all I'm thinking is, yeah, because the cake's on the fucking floor.
well, I'll tell you what, you and Alicia, you guys, like, I love yous, man. Like, you guys, you got the baker back. Orchestrated the waitress staff, the wait staff. I mean, they were in more of a panic than like you guys had it all together, and I couldn't thank you enough. Like, it just,
You guys are
uh,
welcome. We're just happy to be there for you.
yeah, and you were above and beyond, man. I just love you guys very much, and thank you again for being there. But a little bit more history on the Jim Thorpe Hotel. It's considered one of the most haunted hotels in the state of Pennsylvania. Built in 1833, the hotel hosts a number of ghosts. The hotel says several guests have reported an unexplained activity over the years in some of the rooms, which 210 and 311, which I had mentioned. And such things in activity includes TVs randomly turning off and on, objects moving around, a strange orb and shadows appearing in photos. Some kids have even reported seeing ghosts in their beds. And other guests have said that they've woken up to see the chairs in their rooms turned upside down while they were sleeping. So, and in the last several years, guests have reported cold spots, chilly breezes, in the hallways and seeing shadowy figures in their rooms and in the hotel common spaces, kind of like what I said. The lady saw the whatchamacallit, the spirit kind of coming through. Um, what else was there? Overwhelming feelings of being watched and feeling light touches on parts of their bodies as if done by invisible hands. So it's, it's a cool place. If you're ever down in Jim Thorpe, I highly recommend checking it out. Stop in at the restaurant, actually, too. The wings are phenomenal. Hands down, best wings I've ever had anywhere. Absolutely delicious.
And also, if you go across the street, is the Emporium of Curious Goods.
That's true. Yeah, they have
It's a
all
very cool
different
store.
kinds of, yeah, strange stuff, new age products and whatnot. And they actually have some ghost hunting supplies there too, which actually is where I bought my ghost meter.
And there's actually a new candle shop I wanted to tell you about that just
Mm.
opened Saturday up there.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you guys got to check it out. It's actually one of the guys that delivers to my work. It's his sister-in-law
Oh,
owns it. So
what's it
yeah,
called?
he did not remember the name of it. He's like, yeah, she just opened Saturday. You probably saw it. I'm like, uh, I might have. I wasn't
I
there.
do. I do
I,
know there's a soap. If it's still there, because I don't go down there all that much.
yeah.
But there was a candle and soap shop called Conjured. Speaking of the Conjuring House, and I think
Mm,
it's up on Stone Row on Race Street.
yeah, this is a new one, so maybe she bought that one or something like that, or just started a new one. I'll have to find the name of it for
Yeah,
you and
find it
send it
out and
to
we'll
you.
post it. And Matt Northey said it was a great night. Yeah, thank you for being there, brother. I greatly appreciate it. Seeing you and your little girl there. It was a
Yeah,
great
it was
night to
awesome.
be had. Yeah.
Yeah, it was great seeing Matt. I
I
haven't
love
seen
it.
him in a long time, and meeting
Uh-huh.
his daughter was awesome.
Yeah, she's a
Um,
cutie pie.
Also, when you're talking about Molly Maguire's, the movie with Sean Connery was actually filmed. Parts of it were
Yes.
filmed in Jim Thorpe and up at
And
Eckley
the
Mining Village.
Eckley Miners Village, yeah, which is close to us. Oh, and just so people know, we are hopefully going to be booking the two haunted rooms at the hotel later. Well, after the new year, in February. Chad and I are going to be getting the Sweetheart Suite together for
Mhm.
Valentine's Day.
Chocolate, roses, everything.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, rose petals on the bed. We do it right. But
Gianluca bringing us a cake.
yes, 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 and we'll smash it on each other. But anyways, we are hopefully going to be booking the two haunted rooms. We're going to be doing an investigation. We've already been talking to the staff and everybody down there, and hopefully we'll be putting some videos together, and we're going to be trying to get some more stuff together to offer to all of you out there who watch and listen. So we really want to start ramping up our investigation game again. We're not trying to get rich or famous or anything like that. We just love the paranormal, love investigating, and love bringing stuff to our little audience. So hopefully we get some good stuff, and you guys can enjoy that. And that'll be coming up in February, hopefully, if our wives let us go.
Hopefully.
Hopefully, yes. That said, we are past almost a half hour past. So thank you everybody for tuning in for our haunted houses episode. Chad, again, thank you for all your help this weekend and help with the show and everything. And we will be back on October 31st on Halloween. And again, that show is probably going to be an hour later, just so I could go out trick-or-treating with the kids and stuff like that and get back in time. Still don't really know what the topic is going to be, but is definitely going to be Halloween related. So we will see you guys Tuesday, October 31st, 9:30, not 8:30. Chad, again, thank you so much for everything, and everybody who tuned in, thank you. Sorry for the YouTube feed for going out. We're going to be getting a new host. Be Live is pissing us off. So hopefully we'll be on a new streaming platform come the next show. But if not, we'll see you same time, no, an hour later, same place. So good night, everybody. And thank you for tuning in. Chad, brother, good night. And I'll talk to you tomorrow.
Yep. See y'all later. Thank you, guys.
Good night.